Okay, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. My name's James, and welcome to the event. This event's hosted by Escape Route and MSA, Mountain Skills Academy, and is intended as an introduction to splitboarding. With us tonight is April Mason, who is a splitboarding guide with MSA and is affiliated with Canadian Ski Guide Association and the Canadian Avalanche Association. She has extensive knowledge of all things splitboarding and the Pacific Northwest area. She spent many years touring in our local mountains. Escape Route has a 30-year history of helping people enter the backcountry safely and go exploring with excellent specialty gear to make sure the experience is as fantastic as possible. Tonight, we'll be giving away 2 spots in an intro to splitboarding course that's being offered by Mountain Skills Academy, along with 2 splitboard rentals and the necessary gear that goes with that offered by Escape Route for the course dates. If you haven't entered the giveaway yet, you can do so in the link that you'll see in the chat function. To kick things off, I would like to introduce April to talk a bit about how to move in the mountains, talk a bit about our gear, and then I will follow up later to nerd out a little bit about some of the gear that Escape Route sells. Feel free to take it away, April.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. I just want to start by saying I would love to see as many faces as possible in the camera. It just kind of helps me, know that I'm talking to somebody here, not just a computer. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we're going to have a talk about a few things coming up here. All right. Okay, awesome. So I was trying to come up with, a lovely name for my presentation. I couldn't think of anything too witty, so I went short and sweet. Why splitboarding is the greatest. And of course, this is offered by MSA and the Escape Route, so I want to thank them for inviting me to talk for a little while here tonight. There's a few things I'm going to cover. I'm going to keep it short and sweet so that I don't go over time. So, why splitboarding was a choice for me starting out a number of years ago. Secondly, I hear all the time from guests and students, oh goodness, splitboarding is so much harder than ski touring. I'm going to totally debunk those myths tonight. Third of all, I'd like to talk about what skills you need to go into the backcountry, and fourth, how to stay safe out there. And of course, that's not just splitboard specific, but really anybody entering the backcountry for the first time. And last but not least, I'd like to talk a little bit about hard boots. I'm not sure what experience you guys have or whether you've even heard of what hard booting is, but you will certainly find out by the end of the presentation. So the 5 reasons why I got into splitboarding myself and why I think it is, the absolute gem of my life, first and foremost, is the ability to shred POW. Now, of course, that doesn't always happen. We go into the backcountry and under a lot of different conditions. But of course, chasing that soft snow and that perfect board feel is what I've been after for the last 10 years. Second, to explore beautiful places. I told myself a number of years ago that the reason why I get up in the morning is to recognize beautiful things every day. And I'll give you guys a few treats here in a minute, some of the photos that I've taken over the last number of years of touring in the Coast Mountains. Third, for me, I spent a number of years chasing people from lift opening to lift opening, being the first into Spankies, being the first into, Blackcomb Glacier, being the first into a lot of the zones within the Whistler Blackcomb boundaries. And honestly, I got tired of chasing the lift lines. So yeah, for me, being out in the backcountry is about having that chance to walk up mountains and not see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in my day. Fourth, it's the motivation, and the result is to stay in shape. If it wasn't for my compulsive backcountry snacking, I would say that would be a pretty good goal for a lot of people. And last but not least, I remember myself, I'm not a BC native. I remember the first time I saw real mountains and the first time I saw a splitboard, and I thought it was so cool. And then I also remember the first time that I messed up a kick turn on an icy lengthy ascent and slid, 100 feet down the mountain on my butt. And the cool factor goes out the window pretty quickly. So I just want to let you guys know that you're going to have to find your own reasons for being out there, and there are plenty of them. This is one of the images that I've taken. I'm going to show you a few here, going back to this exploration of beautiful places. I am not a professional photographer, and I was not using a professional camera. I just want to show you guys that what you can see out there, the untracked snow that is possible, is absolutely out of this world. This image was taken on the Spearhead Glacier a couple of years ago. Not a particularly busy day, but I would say a zone that is accessible to most splitboarders, probably on their second or third time into the backcountry with the right guidance. Another zone a little bit north of Whistler that is just incredible. You'll have to do your research to find this one. And this is actually one of the beginner tours off of Blackcomb. So this is the entrance to the Body Bag Bowl, which is a pretty quick lap that you can actually do, even probably be home by lunch if you're looking to do a quick day off the backside of Blackcomb. So it just goes on. This is Blackcomb backcountry again, ascending the east ridge of Mount Decker on a beautiful POW day. This is up in the Duffy area of the Joffrey group. You can see in the background, so that might be a hint for you. What is out there is incredible and inspiring, and the snow that we have the potential to ride, of course we're always chasing those soft conditions, is absolutely wonderful. So I want to encourage you guys to take the opportunity to challenge yourself and to see as many beautiful things with your day as you can. So, is splitboarding really harder than ski touring? This is something that I've been dealing with for the last 10 years now, and I want to debunk some of the myths out there right now. First and foremost, I hear this from my students, from my guests all the time. Really, the answer is no, it's not harder, it's just different. Splitboards are complicated, they take a long time. I hear this all the time. They take forever to put together, they take forever to take apart, and skiers are always going to be waiting for you, I'm told. Well, this is not the case. This is the reality of the situation. Transitions initially are going to take a few minutes longer. Developing a technique that works for you is going to take time, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, but soon it becomes foolproof. And if you do the same technique every time, you're going to be able to get your board apart and together in no time at all. Now, the bottom line is beginners are beginners, whether you're a splitboarder or a skier. And in the last 5 years, I have taught hundreds and hundreds of AST1 students, and I can tell you that there is almost no difference whatsoever between the initial transitions of a skier and the initial transitions of a splitboarder. Secondly, another thing that I hear all the time is that you're going to be limited as to where you can go on a splitboard. This is absolutely not the case. Splitboarders use the mountains a little bit differently than skiers, I'll admit, and this is a good thing. Of course, we're going to do everything we can not to stop in the flats directly below a slope. I spent years boot packing, and I tell you that I don't enjoy it. I'd rather be on my splitboard. But the bottom line is, if somebody was to tell me that skis are a better tool in the mountains, and of course, if function is all that matters to you, I'm going to agree with you. Skis are a superior tool, but the gap is narrowing and technology is getting better. And when you develop a system of transitions and develop a system of using the mountains that works for you, there is hardly any difference. Now, using hard boots to snowboard is one transition that I've made in the last couple of years to begin to narrow the gap functionally between myself and maybe some of the other proficient skiers out there in the mountains. And I'll tell you at the end of my presentation what hard booting is. So the last thing that I hear all the time from beginners is that splitboards are heavy and that they don't ride well. In part the truth. Let's figure this one out a little bit. It's true that the first time you ride a splitboard, it's going to feel like you're riding a door. I won't argue with you at all. There is a substantial difference in weight and flex to your on-resort gear, and a difference that is not always seen necessarily between on-resort and backcountry ski gear. But I'll tell you that mass and stiffness is going to work in handy, especially when it comes to big terrain and variable snow conditions. So So for me, it did take some time to get used to flexing my split board, being used to carving it in variable conditions. But once I returned to my solid board, my in-resort days, the board feels like a toy. So there will be a learning curve involved. I'm going to admit that to you for sure. But over time, you will hardly notice a difference. The one thing that I need to say here is the one mistake that a lot of people have made in the last couple of years getting into splitboarding is that they're buying their splitboard too big. Now they hear, okay, well, I'm going to have a heavy backpack and I'm going to be riding POW. Absolutely, a few centimeters bigger for sure. For me, I ride a board that's probably a little bit bigger than what people would expect. I'm on a 156, 157 for in the resort. My split board is a 158. I'm comfortable on a 159, but any bigger than that, it becomes challenging to turn a board of that size in tight trees. And here in the Coast Mountains, when the weather is not cooperating with us and when it's storming like it's about to this weekend, we do a lot of tree skiing. And if your board is too big, it's gonna suck. My partner rides a 159 traditionally. He bought a 163. And although he loves it on big faces and technical descents, when things get tight, it's a challenge for him. So split boards are definitely different than your resort gear. I'll admit that for sure, but nothing that's gonna hold you back for too long. So the other question that I'd like to answer is what skills do I need? And again, these are skills that are not necessarily specific to splitboarding, but as if you're getting started in the backcountry, they're things that you need to consider. So first and foremost, you need confidence riding in variable conditions and with a heavy bag. So think about, where are we? Think about hard icy snow, breakable crust, wet sticky spring snow, deep snow, hard uneven snow. Backcountry travel requires you to ride confidently in a lot of different conditions and with a heavy bag on our back. It takes a good backpack that fits well, and it takes some confidence to be able to do this. So my recommendation is when you go and hit the resort for some resort days, go ahead and pack an extra 10, 15 pounds in that bag and get used to how things are going to feel when you're making turns. If you have no confidence riding in deep snow and variable conditions, I would recommend taking an opportunity to go out on those less than ideal days and start developing that confidence so that when you find yourself in a tricky situation in the backcountry, you'll know how to deal with it and you'll have the skills to deal with it. The second skill that you need to obtain is you need to get avalanche safety training. I'm happy to say that in the industry in the last couple of years, people won't take you out unless you have, the basic training that comes with an AST1. And really, there's absolutely no reason not to get this training. Your AST1 is going to teach you how to trip plan, how to read the avalanche bulletin, how to identify and manage avalanche terrain, and how to rescue somebody if they're buried in an avalanche. But to be quite honest, an AST1 really isn't enough if you plan on making splitboarding a regular thing in your life. So once you have a bit of experience with your gear, once you spent a little bit of time in the backcountry, I recommend going ahead and getting your AST2 booked. If you need some more information about that, go to the MSAA website and there's going to be lots of information. If you have questions to ask, go ahead and call our office and we'll do everything we can to facilitate your education. Third, something that often gets forgotten, I've said it before and I'll say it again, first aid is an area of weakness for many people. Skills and knowledge that should be refreshed every 2 to 3 years or as necessary, depending on how long you can retain information. And the training should address areas that are specific to the environments that we're going into and the risks that we're taking. By this, I mean wilderness first aid experience. I mean understanding of trauma conditions, understanding of exposure-related illnesses. This is all really important. And in my opinion, it should go hand in hand with your AST1 when you're starting to get into the backcountry. The fourth skill that I really have to hammer out is navigation. You need basic navigation skills. Being able to effectively use a map and compass, it seems like a dying art in the face of improved digital mapping technology. And yet most of my AST1 students, despite having experience in the backcountry in the summer months and doing a lot of multi-day hiking, have very little experience with digital mapping applications. So I will digress about this a little bit in a few moments, But I just want to say that, you need to have the basics. You need to be able to triangulate your position in the mountains, how to read topographic lines on a map, and having a physical map with you at all times is really important. But when it comes to tracking yourself in the mountain, when it comes to problem solving in the mountain, digital mapping applications go a long way. So I just want to encourage you all to familiarize yourself. Like I said, I'll come back to that point here in just a second. The fifth skill that you need to have is less of a hard skill, I would say, and more of a soft skill, and something that is probably the most important. You need to have the ability to make rational decisions with others. And I know that sounds really obscure, but it's not. You're going to have to learn to play nice with people, especially in stressful situations, and to make rational decisions with a group of people that you may not necessarily know that well. You are reliant on others out there, and they are reliant on you. And, we get hungry, tired, cold, sore, sometimes scared, but you can't let any of these things cloud your judgment. You must always be open to opposing ideas and interpretations of the terrain and the conditions. So choose your partners wisely and do everything you can to allow them to be open to the decision-making process. Now, I know there is a ton more skills that are applicable here, but I just wanted to really touch on those 5 up front. So I said I'm going to digress here for a second. I've pulled a few screenshots from some of the common digital mapping applications that I use and some of the ones that are a little bit more well known. The first one that comes up here, if my screen is going to move over, here we go. So I have Google Earth set up here. I've picked a zone that's just outside of the Whistler area, so we can see Wedge Mountain and Parkhurst Mountain in front of us, and Wedgemount Lake just before that, just down here. So again, a really common summer hiking destination and a complex winter ski touring destination. I'm just using it as an example here. So Google Earth, with a bit of practice, will allow you to see terrain that your eye may not be trained necessarily to read topographic lines quite as accurately. Now, this is a Google Earth. You're able to toggle and swivel your way around all of these features. Another application that I really enjoy using is FatMap. So this is looking at the exact same zone from the FatMap application, exact same angle with a little bit more information on the screen. Now, FatMap does allow you to add multiple layers to help improve your understanding of the terrain. So the first one I have here is, a basic topographic map. Looking at this now, I've realized that it's currently in feet. I haven't changed it over to meters, but nonetheless, it'll give you an understanding of what the terrain is doing. Now, one that I find extremely useful to beginners is the slope incline overlay. So I tell a lot of my AST1 students, there's a high correlation between slope angle and the occurrence of human triggered avalanches. In fact, I think it's up to 95% of human triggered avalanches occur between the slope angles of 32 and 45 degrees. So by using these digital mapping applications to assess terrain from a different perspective and give you a bit of an insight as to what the slope is doing around you, it's going to help you understand where your safe zones are. Now, using these applications, of course, has to be in connection with the training that comes with, your avalanche safety training course, because even though you may be in a lower angle area, below the mountain, you may be down here in the blue on Wedgemount Lake. If you are underneath a slope that has the potential for natural avalanches, of course, you may not be necessarily in the safe zone that you intend. Now, FatMap also has an avalanche specific incline overlay. So toggling over here to the next screen, it highlights the slope and the slope angles that are relevant in this situation. Now, just because you're over here on the Wedgemount Glacier doesn't mean you are without hazard, of course, because glacial travel is extremely hazardous in and of itself. But if you do want to get an understanding of the basics of where these avalanches can occur, this is a wonderful, wonderful tool to do so. And again, one that I found that very few people have experience with. Finally, I just want to have a look here at Gaia. So this is the more traditional 2D overlay of the same area. We can see the Wedgemont Lake here, Lake here, and the Wirt Glacier and the Wedgemont Glacier over here. Now, Gaia has also improved their technology to allow 3D mapping technology. So this one here is a topographic overlay in 3D. And then, of course, you can also have the satellite imagery as well. So it's one of the bones that I've been trying to pick for the last couple of years, trying to get people aware of their surroundings. And I hear it all the time from my AST1 students that they just weren't aware of the area that we're going into and didn't understand the terrain features. So let me just tell you that there really isn't an excuse not to understand it. There is a ton of resources out there to familiarize yourself with the mountains around you and to expand the possibilities about where you can go splitboarding. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and something that I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, is how to stay safe in the backcountry. There's a kind of a hit list of 7 things that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to spend a few moments on this because I get asked all the time. You know, I have a low risk threshold. How can I be sure that I can go backcountry skiing and enjoy the mountains and not put myself in harm's way? So I'm going to start here. The very first is get the skills, refresh them often and completely. So get the skills. I've already talked about taking the necessary courses, whether that's your avalanche safety training course, your crevasse rescue course, your navigation course, whether it's formal education or informal education, you know, you got to go and get the training. The second part of that is you have to refresh your skills. There is absolutely no reason for people to have spent years in the backcountry without taking, you know, a formal refresher. And in fact, I would encourage it every single season, whether you're active in the backcountry or not. And there's lots of ways to do that, like I said, formally and informally. And the last point I want to make here is when you refresh your skills, do it completely. I hear all the time, well, yes, okay, we've done a transceiver search. We did a couple transceiver searches this season. It's not enough. When I teach courses, and especially, you know, beginner people that are taking their AST1, the hardest part of companion rescue, the part that's going to take potentially as much time or more time than anything else, is digging. And digging seems like a very simple exercise, but it's not. And it takes a lot of understanding of the situations and awareness of your surroundings and of the conditions of the burial in order to do it effectively and fast. So I would encourage everybody who spends time in the backcountry to run through complete rescue scenarios from top to bottom and do it on a slope that's going to add, you know, an element of difficulty to it. For splitboarders, the real issue here is competency skiing downhill with skins on. My very first professional level avalanche course, the Canadian Avalanche Association Operations 1, the very first test they do is they require you to ski downhill to perform your first rescue analysis and your first rescue scenario. And as much as I enjoy watching beginner splitboarders, you know, go for a tumble in soft conditions, it is a competency that you're going to need potentially if an avalanche occurs while you're on the skin track and you need to get down to the rescue location quickly. So keep that in mind. The second thing that I really have to encourage is do your research and keep notes. There is, where am I here? Which means checking the weather and the avalanche bulletin as often as possible. If you're in the backcountry on a regular basis, I would suggest daily. It doesn't take more than 10 minutes to pull out a notebook. You know, professionally, we use these Right in the Reins, these little waterproof notebooks. I've got my pencil stuck right to the back of it. And the night before I go for a tour or the few days before, I'm making notes in my book about the weather conditions, about the avalanche conditions. And this process of keeping notes is going to help you understand the ebbs and flows of the avalanche hazard and understand the patterns at play, which is going to give you more information. More information and more insight means less uncertainty, which means less risk. So taking, you know, the time to be diligent about your research and about your note taking, I think, is really important. It sounds very similar, but point number 3 is learn as much as possible. So take every opportunity to learn. So whether that's from your ski partners that have the knowledge and experience to share, whether that's online forums, whether that's formal learning environments like courses, one of the reasons that we go into the backcountry is to challenge ourselves. And so I encourage you to take on that challenge studiously. Ask questions, definitely, of your leaders. It helps keep us accountable. It helps keep us reflecting on our own decisions, and take advantage of the infinite online resources that are out there. So the Canadian Avalanche Association is a publicly funded organization, meaning your tax dollars are paying for it, so you might as well use it. And then, of course, we have the American Avalanche Association. So these two organizations can be found at avalanche.ca and avalanche.org. And there is an absolutely incredible amount of information and learning opportunities on these sites. And if your buddies aren't exactly a rich source of information, of wisdom and insight, then I would encourage you to seek out other sources. As much as we do like to learn from our friends, I think finding a formal environment and finding more information is incredibly important. Point number 4 on how to stay safe in the backcountry is one of the more important, and that's to pay attention to the changing conditions out there. Observation is power, and Mother Nature is not exactly shy to let you know what's going on out there. So pay attention. The night before your tour, go ahead, do your research and record. You should be watching the weather like a hawk and working hard to fill in any gaps in your understanding of the conditions up until that point. So when we focus on weather, we talk about wind, temperature, and precipitation. You're going to learn this in your intro to splitboarding or your AST1 course. And then finally, when you have feet on the snow, you need to be listening, looking, and feeling what's going on around you. And you need to be constantly repeating that process and constantly assessing the changing conditions as you move up through new terrain and up in elevation onto different aspects of the mountain. Point number 4, and I guess I'm telling you every single one of these is important, but it's one that is close to my heart, is be thorough with your equipment. So get the right equipment, learn how to use it, take care of it, and make sure you haven't forgotten anything. Equipment has evolved massively over the last 10 to 15 years, and it is really the only thing that's keeping us alive out there, to be quite honest. Human beings are not designed to survive in these extreme environments for very long. So respect your equipment and what it's going to do for you. The other part of that, part 2 of being thorough with your equipment, is having a repair kit that's going to manage any deficiencies in the backcountry. I tell my students that the number 1 problem that you're going to experience is gear malfunctions. And 90% of the time, it's some ice in your binding that just has to be scraped or chipped out. But other times, it's something simple that can be solved with having a few extra screws or a screwdriver or an extra ratchet or an extra ladder in your bag. And it's going to take, a year or 2 to really figure out the little pieces that are worth carrying with you at any given time. But at very least, and again, if you've been one of my students, you'll hear this time and time again, a roll of hockey tape is going to get you out of a lot of sticky situations. The last part of being thorough with your equipment is where am I here? Being thorough with your equipment is to not shave weight for silly reasons. My friends are always ragging on me for having such a big, heavy bag. But I love, to tell them that guess who's carrying the first aid kit? Guess who's carrying the repair kit? Guess who's carrying the splint? Guess who's carrying the tarp? My bag on a good day maybe weighs 20 pounds, maybe 22 or 23. And then of course you add in extra equipment like extra food, extra layers on those cold days, or maybe some ropes and harnesses, and easily I'm reaching 30 pounds. So back to that get used to carrying a heavy bag thing. It's worth it. It really is. And it doesn't take long before your balance adjusts and you're able to manage it. To be quite honest, I find it really strange now snowboarding without a backpack. So yeah, it's kind of become part of me. Point number 6 on how to stay safe in the backcountry, and it's another one, is respect everyone's opinion and risk threshold. Let's see if I can get my screen to queue up here. There we go. Respect everyone's opinion and risk threshold. So Your best line of defense out there to keep your group safe is to listen to them. You need to work together to assess the conditions, to keep eyes on each other at all times, to make informed decisions, and to help each other when accidents happen. Everyone must feel free to express concerns and offer insights, or the whole system and the whole team collapses. So if somebody wants to pull the trigger and they, don't really feel what's going on out there and they're not really happy with the feeling of the snow under their feet, you got to respect that, because one day you're going to be in that position where you're going to ask that respect of them and that consideration of them. Even really simple things. I was out in the backcountry with a friend the other day. It was lunchtime. I pulled out my sandwich and he pulled out a small bag of mixed nuts, and I look at him and I said, "Hey man, what's going on? Where's your lunch?" And he goes, I'll be okay. And I was like, "No, where's your lunch, man?" He goes, "Well, I forgot it in the truck." Well, I had 2 sandwiches that day. So guess what? You take care of your group and you make sure that everyone's fed and hydrated at all times. Point number 7, and I know this sounds a little bit selfish coming from, a guide here, but I really can't encourage it enough to hire a guide. Don't be afraid. If you want to check out a new zone, or if the conditions are a little bit tricky, the avalanche danger is a little bit elevated, it's a worthwhile investment in your safety and your group safety. And I know that there are not a ton of splitboard guides, but the number of us is growing. So there's definitely myself and a few other agencies around town that would be happy to show you some sweet turns and help you get used to your equipment. I know that it seems with my students who are in their 40s and 50s, they have no hesitation to hire a guide whatsoever. But it's quite common for people in their 20s and 30s to be reluctant financially or otherwise. And I just want to let you know that there is a lot to learn from the people that are out there in the snow every day, and from the people that have formal avalanche education. So if you're thinking that it's outside of your reach financially or otherwise, or if you're thinking that it's not necessary, think again, and please reach out to us and let us know that what we can do to keep yourself safe out there. So those are my 7 points. Get the skills, do your research, learn as much as possible, pay attention to changing conditions, be thorough with your equipment, respect everyone's opinion, and don't hesitate to hire a guide. If there's anything else, I would love you guys to throw it up there in the chat bulletin, things that you have found. If there's some of you out there with some experience, which I absolutely am sure that there is, throw some of those up there, and I'd like to hear what you think about the things that have kept you safe over the last couple of years. The next thing that I want to talk about is this old nugget. So why hard boots? I have been a splitboarder for a number of years now. I have transitioned 3 years ago to hard boots. So what that is using an alpine touring ski boot for splitboarding. And there are a number of questions that I can answer for you about it. There's a number of reasons why I think that it's a wonderful choice for me. And there's also a number of reasons why I think that it's probably not the first step that I would take if you're getting into splitboarding. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, like I said, it's using an alpine touring ski boot for splitboarding. These are often modified for a softer ride feel. There, to my knowledge, is currently no such thing as a ski boot made specifically for hard boot splitboarding, but there are definitely some products that we can find on the market that are going to serve these purposes. Number 2, for hard booting, it utilizes a tech toe or a pin, or what some people might know as a Dynafit style toe piece for improved efficiency on the uphill. I'll get into this in just a couple minutes here. Why would someone hard boot, and why would they choose to use a ski boot to go snowboarding? Well, generally longer tours, technical climbs, riding in variable conditions, otherwise known as splitboard mountaineering. And then on the other side of things, I remember I got told a few years ago that if I ever wanted to be a guide, I was gonna have to transition to hard boots. Well, as it happens, I made that kind of decision anyways, but it is, if you are planning to kind of get into the nitty gritty of it, it is an amazing way to kind of begin to level the playing field functionally and efficiently between you and some of the skiers out there. And the last point that I have to mention is that it's not for everyone. It took me some time to get used to this system, and it's one that it takes not only financial investment, but just a lot of motivation. So let's talk about it. So first and foremost, I use a product produced by a company out of Colorado, and it's called the Phantom System. So Phantom Snow Industries. If you're looking for any of the information, I have the link down here in the right-hand corner of the screen. Now, there are alternatives on the market right now, but this is what I've been using, and I really, truly love the system. So what are we looking at? Over here on the left, we have the binding plate, and on the right, we have the board cleat. So what this is the attachment system for ride mode. What it looks like when it's on your board is like this. So these are the first of 5 pieces of equipment that are specific to hard booting. And the third of the fifth is, you're looking at it right there, is an alpine touring style boot. Now, the boot that we're looking at here is a boot that has been modified by Phantom based on the atomic backland shell. So what they've done is they've taken the basic atomic backland, or the atomic backland carbon, they've modified the walk mode on it and a few buckles, and they've made it a little bit more true for snowboard feel. So that's what we're looking at here. Now, there's a few other pieces of equipment that you're going to need, and you can buy all of these kind of as a package deal. And again, there are alternatives on the market. I think James is going to talk a bit about that. Over on the left here, we're looking at the customized Phantom toe piece here. So this is a traditional technical pin style toe piece, spring loaded. And on the lower portion here, we do have ski crampon compatibility. This is the toe piece that attaches your boot to the board, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the reasons why we use this system. And then over on the right, we have what they call the rocket risers, which is your riser by any other term, or climbing wire. So that's the piece that allows you to level out the angle of your foot while climbing a steep slope. So what does that look like on the board? Kind of like this. So you clip into the tech toe piece at the front of your boot, those little holes, and then you can flip the riser up and down with efficiency pretty easily with your ski pole without having to reach down and use your hands. So there's 4 main reasons why splitboarding helps increase your efficiency in the mountains. And the first has to deal with what we're looking at here. So the free pivoting upper cuff. Now, in this photo is the traditional, I guess, atomic backland carbon. So this is the unmodified version from Atomic. The lever that you can see on the right portion of the left photo is what's responsible for allowing the cuff to pivot. And when we are snowboarding downhill, we want obviously a traditional snowboard feel, so we lock out that walk mode. But when we go uphill, we enable the boot to rotate, to pivot back and forth. And what this does, it provides a longer stride. And because it provides us with a longer stride, it means we take less steps. And because we take less steps, it means that we're more efficient on the uphill. Now, the other thing that it does for us is it reduces the strain on our calves compared to a traditional snowboard boot. Now, I have been argued about this time and time again. When I started splitboarding, there was no Jeremy Jones walk mode snowboard boot. There was no Travis Rice walk mode snowboard boot. And the bruises that I used to get on my calves from mashing my calves into the rear spine of my snowboard boot is just gnarly. So what this does is it prevents that and allows us to take a longer, more easily made stride on the uphill. The second thing about hard booting, the second piece of technology that works for us to make us a little bit more efficient is it allows for a greater range of motion with each step, and it allows for a direct connection with our ski edge while skidding. Again, if we're looking at more technical terrain, perhaps steeper skin tracks with icy ascents, it allows for a direct connection from your foot all the way to the ski's edge. Whereas with a traditional soft boot setup, it's quite common for there to be some play between your foot and the boot, and then again between your boot and the binding. And so as a result, when you are trying to side hill in exposed terrain, it is quite stressful on your ankles and on your knees. And the system with a soft boot is a little bit wider overall when you're skidding across a skin track. So as a result, using this system, we just have, less wear and tear on our ankles and a little bit more efficiency. Now, the third thing that works in our function with hard booting, should you decide to take the dive, is that the boot is the binding. And as a result, you're reducing the overall weight on your foot. Now, this is significant, truly. The boot essentially functions as almost all parts of the binding. And the boot, the stiff shell of the boot, is going to allow us to kick steps in firm snow conditions. So I definitely remember, my soft boot days 4 or 5 years ago, being in firm windswept snow at the top of a ridge and being just absolutely gripped, trying to keep myself on the snow and keep secure footing. Now I know what you're going to tell me. Go ahead and use a crampon. It's absolutely true, but there are drawbacks to using soft boots with crampons. The other thing that the stiff boot shell affords us is just edge control, again, on these stiff side hill traverses. So again, there's a direct connection between your foot and the edge of your ski. Now, the one piece of technology that is required to make this hard boot setup work is the toe and heel welts on a boot. So as you can see here, there's a few things going on in the left photo. We have the Phantom system here with a canted footbed. So what that means is that the footbed is angled in towards the center of the board a little bit to reduce the strain that the boot might create or force on a more upright knee angle. Now, I tell you that getting in and out of my hard boot is faster, actually, with regards to the binding that it is with a traditional soft boot setup. So I'm not bending down and ratcheting and bumping all the snow out and feeding ladders into my ratchets. It's a quick down, slip the heel into the rear wire and then lever over the toe piece that you see here onto the toe well. So you do have to be aware that boots that don't have the toe and heel welds are not going to be compatible with any of the hard boot binding setups that I'm aware of. Now, the second point here is that there is flexibility in the connection to allow some side-to-side, more traditional ride feel. So you can see on the right of the photo here, if you guys can see my cursor, there's a bit of space here and a bit of space on the left as well. So when I am strapped into my split board with my hard boots in ride mode, I do have an incredible back and forth range of motion that's going to allow me to, to do any presses or to, engage my tail or my nose in the way that I see fit. And really the other thing that we have to consider here with the toe and the heel well is it allows us to use a technical crampon. Now I've been definitely, combated by some soft boots, some diehard soft boot split boarders, which I support. Whatever works for you, go for it. But I have had crampons fall off of my split board boots in technical terrain. I've almost lost a crampon once because of it, and it's a really scary thing. The stiffer the snowboard boot, the soft boot that you have, of course, the less likely that is to happen. But the ability to use a traditional crampon on your ski boot for mountaineering purposes is a huge advantage. Now, of course, I'm not going to tell you just about the goods. There are some negatives as well. It takes time to adjust to the new feel. And, I've been snowboarding for upwards of 20 years of my life. I've been splitboarding for the better part of 10. I was on soft boots for many years, and it still took me, I would say, probably a full season before I really felt confident and really felt at home in my hard boot setup. And, some people, unfortunately, might go through a couple of pairs of boots before they really find one that works for them and that works for their ride feel. And then on top of that, there is modifications that some people make. Now, my boot setup, I'm riding my Atomic Backlands almost stock. I've actually increased the power strap. I've put a stiffer power strap on there because I do like the support on the upper shin for those firmer toe side carves in variable conditions. But there will be some adjustment time if you are a split boarder already. We're using soft boots and you're looking to transition to a hard boot setup. It's going to be a process, so just be prepared for that. And last but not least, there is a significant financial buy-in. Alpine touring boots are not cheap. A lot of boots you're looking in the $700, $800, $900 range, some even more. And then, of course, looking at the binding system as well, there's a couple of products that are available on the market. But the Phantom setup itself is costly. The great side of that is I've had my Phantoms for about 3 years now, and I haven't had to replace anything just until this season. I finally replaced my toe pieces. Now, the other downside of this is that there is limited secondhand gear available. So, you are looking to probably buy a lot of these products from new, and perhaps even depending on what's available and what you're looking for, you may be looking on getting it from south of the border. So that's the downside of hard boots. For most people that are just getting into splitboarding, 100% my recommendation is to begin with a soft boot setup. Again, unless you're specifically chasing after technical, mountaineering style objectives, or unless you're looking to get into the professional guiding community. It's something that I would probably do sooner rather than later if that's going to be your choice. Now, with regards to soft boots, there's a lot that I can speak of, but I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the technology just yet. I know that James has a lot to speak about with regards to boards, bindings, poles. I'll just say that the soft boot binding system that I used for a number of years is the Karakoram system. It's a binding from just south of the border as well in Washington, and it's a really sturdy, really well-made binding. So I'll let James talk about that. Now, this is my old faithful right here. So my workhorse that I teach a lot on is a Jones solution from a few years ago. It is a definitely kind of do everything and do it really fast kind of board. I wouldn't say that it excels in tight low angle trees, but it is definitely a POW shredder, and in variable conditions, high alpine, firm icy snow, it holds an edge really well, and it absolutely rips. And of course, on the board here, I have my Phantom set up with my toe pieces, and I have my atomic backland. So that just the traditional atomic backland from a couple seasons ago. And it's been treating me really, really well. The only thing, like I said, the only change I've had to make in a couple of years now is I've replaced my toe pieces just because the pins have worn out. And then I typically replace my boot liners every year or two, depending on how much use they get. But just keep in mind that, I'm on my gear 4 or 5 days a week between teaching and my personal endeavors. So I can tell you that this board and this setup has seen hundreds and hundreds of backcountry days, which reinforces my point that if you manage your gear really well, if you do your research and you take care of your equipment, it can last a very long time. So even though splitboarding seems like a huge financial buy-in and a huge financial burden, if you take care of your stuff and if you buy, the equipment, whether it's secondhand or new, it's going to take care of you out there in the backcountry. The last thing I want to say is that, don't be afraid if something is not working for you. The backcountry industry right now, especially splitboarding, is exploding. I'm sure if you guys have been looking for new gear in the last year, since COVID has become a reality in our life, there's a limited amount of product available on the market, which means that if you purchase something that doesn't happen to work for you very well, you will not have a hard time getting rid of it. Trust me, you'll probably be able to sell it for almost 100% of what you paid for it, given the demand that's going on right now. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about with you guys. I understand that there are a number of questions about, how the splitboard system works, how skins work. And if you do have, concerns, I encourage you to take an introduction to splitboarding course. So we'll take you out there, we'll take our time, we'll show you exactly how to put your skins on, we'll show you exactly how to transition, we'll take you into some terrain, and we'll get you some nice turns. And that way you'll get a taste of what's going on out there and whether this is something that's for you. And of course, if you are committed, then absolutely, dive right in to your AST1, your Avalanche Safety Training 1, which is a valuable 2-day course that trust me, you will not regret. So it is important to understand what you're dealing with out there, because it is a risky environment. And, this year, I think, has taught a lot of us that have gotten into the backcountry recently the lesson that, we are not immune to what's going on out there with Mother Nature. So stay safe, guys. And please, if you have questions, I want to be a resource for you. So we're going to take 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to answer some of these questions, whether they're for myself or James. So go ahead and write them down and let me know if there's anything that I can help you with. with. And then, of course, if we don't get to your questions, I'm going to ask you to send an email through to Mountain Skills Academy, and I'd like to be able to answer those questions for you directly. The other way is that you can reach out to me on Facebook if you'd like, and I'm happy to answer your questions that way. The last thing that I want to say is that I've been running a women's specific backcountry program for the last couple of years called the Women's Backcountry Series. And the good that I've seen it do in the last couple of years has been just amazing. So please look that up on Facebook, Women's Backcountry Series. And that's another forum that if you have questions or if you're looking for partners to go out and share your first couple experiences with, that's a great place to do it. So I'll take this opportunity to turn it over to James again. Keep tuned, guys, because we are going to be giving away 2 spots on an introduction to splitboarding combined with a free rental from the escape route. So if you are looking just to try things out, then stay tuned, and we're going to be drawing for winners pretty soon. All right, it's over to you, James.
Thanks, April. That was very informative. I have to mirror a lot of what you said, and to everyone that's watching, I'm sorry if I repeat some of the points that April's already made. We might have a bit of overlap on our gear comments. What I can show you is basically a broad overview of gear that's available in the marketplace. What we sell is representative of this broad overview. We've had a very busy year. We're definitely struggling to keep inventory on the floor. So what I have is really limited at the moment. To go splitboarding, you will of course need a splitboard and the appropriate bindings that match that piece of equipment. So if you're used to riding your solid resort board, I know that there is YouTube online hacks where you can cut that board in half and try and create your own splitboard. Think of that as a throwback from when this sport was really in its infancy, and people were trying to be innovative and find new ways to get their equipment to work the way they wanted it to. These days, you have quite a lot of nice options, and I would advise leaving your resort board alone and then create your own split board by purchasing it. So behind me on the wall, I'm not sure how well you can see this, there's a small assortment of boards that we would carry. This company is Palace. Palace is a really unique niche company. It's making a very high-end board designed really for the slightly smaller rider. They're advertised as a women's specific board, and it's a women-owned, women-designed company. However, we do have a lot of success with these boards with men as well. It entirely depends on your weight, your height, and your riding style. The board to the right, the brown board, that's an Arbor Coda. So whether it's the Coda, the Epiphany, or the Zeitgeist, these are basically workhorse, do-everything directional snowboards. By directional, I mean they're boards that really like to go one way. If you're a switch rider and you generally ride a twin board, there are options in the split board marketplace for that. They're just a little fewer and farther between. In terms of bindings, the split board bindings that we're showing in our store at the moment would be a Karakoram Prime Nomad binding here on this Zeitgeist board. I have a very rare beast attached to this Epiphany. This is a dyno binding from Spark, which is a hard boot binding that Spark makes. And then on the Arbor board, we have a new binding for us here at Escape Route. It's made by Plume. They're out of Chamonix in France. And this particular binding is called the Eterloo. So these are 3 different ways to get your feet attached to your board. The board on the left here that I'm kind of partially blocking, that's one of my own personal boards. And it also has that Phantom hard boot setup that April was talking about. And I've really found that to be just a wonderful tool, because most of my touring friends are skiers. The way that they move through the mountain is a little bit different than how I do. And I do find that having a hard boot setup makes my life a lot easier when it comes to side hill approaches, steeper trees, other more technical parts of the up track. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Phantom because it's not something that we can currently offer you for sale. It's a neat product to keep in mind, however. So what I'll do is just grab this board here. This is our Zeitgeist, and this board from Palace, this is really a dedicated powder board. This is your big powder day board. You'll see the position on this board is fairly far back in terms of how you stand on the board. Gather it's a bit tough to see that on the camera. What I wanted to do was put the board up on the table here and just show you the binding transition. So with a Karakoram binding, which this company is, there's a lever on the heel that I can pull down. See if I can do a little better job here. So there's this lever on the back of the binding, and it just lets the binding come off of the board. So now you can see the board cleat itself sitting on the board, and it makes a bit more sense why your traditional resort binding won't work in this application, but one of these will. So with this system, once you've actually split the board, this binding moves into a pivot position and it allows you to walk uphill. These are a binding you can actually put back onto your solid board as well. Karakoram sells a component, which is basically the adapter plate that I just showed you, that lets you move this binding across any board you might have in your quiver or want to use. The neat thing about a Karakoram system, their board cleats slightly overlap the seam of the board. It's something that they call active joining, and it is intended to make the board a little bit stiffer once you put the halves back together. We can argue the minutia whether or not that actually works. I believe it does. It takes some of the load away from the binding in terms of a stiffening component, and it lets the binding do what it's designed to do, which is be a binding, give you some flex laterally and let you move around on the board a bit easier. Now, we're sold out of our Spark arc bindings. I don't have one to show you, but with the hard boot system, I can show you how the pucks operate. So this is the more common system you'll see in the marketplace. And a puck is really just a way to attach the binding to the deck of the board. So with this board, we have this binding here, and to remove it, it's a lift at the front and a slide, and it comes right off there, and you can see that there's these pucks mounted to the deck. So these ones are canted, and you can kind of see there's an angle to these. You don't have to run a canted puck. As a matter of fact, with a soft boot, I would probably run a flat puck. But this system means the binding has to bring a fair bit of stiffness to the board. So when you slide this across, the binding's doing double duty. Now it's stiffening the board and it's acting like a binding. Not necessarily a bad thing, just something to be aware of when you're doing your research and searching through this equipment. The rest of this isn't really worth getting into at this stage, but you do buy a hard boot binding a la carte. So you don't purchase a dyno system complete. You would buy the base plates, the pucks, the binding, the toe, heel risers, all as separate components. Now, you'll find that with the puck system, a number of other companies have jumped onto that design. So Volet sort of started the puck idea some time ago, another innovative French company, and they're still making their bindings today. Spark has run with that system, and their puck is slightly different. So you can't necessarily swap these things from system to system, but it's a common theme. And then you'll move through other, Union as an example, and other companies that use a puck. Burton has a similar puck as well. So when you're trying to make your decision about how to get set up with gear to go splitboarding, I would mirror what April said. It's common that we would hear customers come in here and talk about or ask for a 10 to 12 centimeter longer snowboard because they're going to be in powder and they're going to be carrying a pack. I do believe that that's generally a bad idea. There are certain boards in the marketplace that have enormous powder rocker in the tip, and there might be other reasons you would upsize your board significantly. But like skis, snowboards have many different shapes and designs. So if we were to go back and look at our Palace boards, these boards ride quite true to size. If anything, they ride slightly longer than the number that's written on them. So when it's time to shop for a board, if you're buying it from a reputable store or an online store or anywhere where you can actually talk to somebody, it's worth asking how the board sizes. You can head to that manufacturer's website. There's usually a sizing chart. I find them fairly vague. Size charts are generally a weight range, not so much a height range, but they're looking more for the weight of the rider. So when you have a weight range of 70 pounds for one size of board, and then it only goes up 20 pounds for the next weight range on the next size of board, it means you can probably overlap a couple of different sizes. This is where talking to someone like April through a course that you could take with MSA, or talking to someone like one of the staff members that work here at Escape Route, we can start to steer a recommendation for you based on your riding style, where you believe you'll be doing most of your touring in real life, and what your fantasy is of where you actually want to be going. So the other bit that's really kind of neat, something we can offer, we have an Alpine Demo Center in Whistler. So this is a second store. It's second to our marketplace store, which is our traditional store. The Alpine Demo Center is set up very much exclusively to be just that, a demonstration center for all of the gear that we sell. We have a strong focus on skis and a growing focus on split boards. As we continue to evolve our split board business, there will be an opportunity in the future to demo other hard boot binding systems, should that be something you want to do. But the way that our demos are structured right now, they're all based around Spark or Karakoram bindings. We generally have the ability to give you that choice, so you can choose a board and choose a binding, pair them up, and go out for your day. It's on us to make sure the hardware is correctly tightened, everything is intact on the board, and we do a good job. Our gear is well loved. There's a lot of maintenance and miles on what we're currently offering out of our Alpine Demo Center. It's not necessarily indicative of what you'd see with new equipment, but it is pretty inspiring to see that this gear performs this well with hundreds upon hundreds of days on it. Now, the system here that we have from Plume, being so new to us, we don't have that available as a demo yet, but we will have that dyno system available as a demo. At the moment, it's a bring your own boots sort of arrangement. We don't offer any soft boot or demo any hard boot at this stage. We find boots are so personal, especially from the snowboard side. It's nicer to get your proper fit. Jumping ahead just a little bit, and I'll try not to do this too much, I noticed a question appear in the chat window, and that question had to be, just scrolling back to it, here we are, boots that are too big for me. So this question says, my existing soft boots are too big for me, and what can I do about it? You may have to buy new boots. There might not be much that you can do about that. However, talking to us and going through a proper boot fit could be beneficial for you. We have an option, which we've gone down this road with a few people over the years. You can purchase replacement liners, much as April was saying. So an Intuition liner, something like this, it's a fantastic way to take your current ski boot or your current snowboard boot into something that's going to be an amazing boot. Liners tend to have 100+ day lifespan. Yes, you can reheat them and remold them, and you can do some other fancy work with foam and tune them up. This specific liner, this Intuition Pro Tour liner, it's designed with a cutaway, so you do get a little bit of a walk mode capability. Even though your soft snowboard boot is still fairly rigid, you're not also fighting the liner. Intuition's quite a warm liner, which is very nice. And uniquely in the market, when you mold Intuition foam, it doesn't only compress, it can also expand. So if you had a boot that was a full size or a half a size too big, there is low, medium, and high volume options from this liner company. You might be well suited to a high volume liner. It's a bit of a band-aid solution. The right thing to do, in my opinion, really is to replace your boot. However, a new boot, an expensive boot, and otherwise good boot, this is a great idea and a great way to get some life out of that boot. So I'll try and not do too many more question answer things, but I just saw that one and I happen to have this near me. Along with your split board and your bindings, Another major piece of equipment that's different is the ski pole. So oftentimes you'll see ski poles that are one piece, meaning they don't compress or expand. Um, there's a number of other ski poles that have one expansion joint in the middle, meaning when you have to compress that pole and strap it to your pack to ride down, it could look like you have an antenna sticking out of your backpack. So there's, I guess, an ability to hook trees and other things that could be problematic with a tall pole. You could even argue there's a safety component with a big long spear sticking out of your backpack. So we have a couple of different options. This is one of our rental poles. This is a black diamond pole. It's called the Expedition 3-piece. And there's two separate cams on this. So this pole extends properly out into a full-length ski pole, which means you can use it quite easily for its intended up-hill purpose. But it's so compact, when you strap this to your pack, you're not even going to know that it's there. It's tucked away quite nicely. They're reasonably priced, and they're very durable. I'm a little bit more of a gear nerd, so I tend to lust after things that are made of carbon fiber and things that have fancy folding systems and that kind of thing. So this is 5 years old, this particular pole. This is a Black Diamond Z pole, and what it's designed to do is expand three separate segments and then lock into a ski pole from that position. Something that's really cool with this one, especially if you're riding side country Whistler Blackcomb and you're chasing someone back in at the end of the day. And as you know, in Whistler, there's a number of long flat areas that require a fair bit of speed and commitment to cross. And really, at the end of the day, a little bit of pole action to just get that last 100 meters out. So instead of your ski friends taunting you and reaching a ski pole back and asking you to pull them along, you can actually just ride down with these under your arm, knowing that you're coming to a flat place, and deploy them while you're riding. This means you're not stopping to take your feet out, you're moving in a more efficient fashion, and you can impress your friends because it's kind of a circus trick to be able to do this. So with ski poles, buy nice gear. Don't just take some cobbled together thing if you have the opportunity to get something nicer. As far as skins go, I didn't want to get too far into climbing skins, but a nice quality climbing skin is a real treat. So whether you're buying that from Black Diamond or Pamoka or G3 or any of the other myriad skin companies that are on the market, one of the big takeaways that I try and share with customers here is there's different types of skins, meaning they're constructed from different materials. So a skin that's a pure nylon skin, there's a number of pros and cons that go along with this material, but the overall takeaway is they have a lot of grip to go uphill. So if you're new to skinning and you're not very confident with your uphill capabilities, a high grip skin is fantastic. It You sacrifice glide, but you get a lot of confidence when you're getting into steeper terrain where you may be using your heel risers or something like that. So you'll find those from G3 in our store, and they're called Alpinist. That particular skin, it's around $200. It's not the lightest, it's not the easiest to pack, it's not the best gliding, but none of those things really matter if your particular struggle is moving uphill. So I'm a big fan of trying to purchase gear that makes your life easier. And if you can identify that uphill is your challenge, go for a grippy skin. Myself, as my experience increases in this sport, I tend to move through the technology that's advertised reasonably quickly. And then I finally found something that worked well for me. And it was a really good blend of glide and grip. So rather than being a full nylon construction skin, the plush on this one is usually a blend of mohair, which is a natural fiber, and nylon. So you'll see this as a 70% mohair, 30% nylon blend. Most people make a skin like this. You're trading off a little bit of uphill grip to get a significant amount of additional glide. So maybe why glide is important. It's very rare that what a ski tour encompasses is straight uphill to your objective, gear together, straight downhill back to the car. You're always moving through undulating terrain, and you're even at some points skiing downhill in split mode with your skins on your board. So having some glide is fantastic because it might mean the difference between trying to skate ski up a short, steep pitch and actually making it to the top of that with your ski friends. So trial and error experience. Sounds a little rich of me to say this, but some people have multiple pairs of skins. They'll have a nylon skin for a certain adventure and a mohair skin for others. Not necessary. That's a luxury. I think you should have one piece of gear that you're confident with and use it in as many places as you can. But you do have the ability to do that. Moving with your skins on in split mode on your board, it raises another point about bindings. I didn't want to get too into this, and if you'd like me to, ask in the questions. There is the ability when you split your board to turn your board into a pseudo pair of skis. So you're actually locking down your heels at this point. When you lock your heels, which not all bindings necessarily offer out of the box, it lets you ski. You're no longer telemarking in that awkward situation. You're actually skiing home. I had an experience early this year. It was a mid or late October, very overly ambitious ski tour up Black Tusk. And we were walking for the first 3 kilometers up the track. It was just gravel and rocks and gross mess. We finally found enough snow to get actually skinning. Went up, had our day, and on the way back down, most of that had frozen solid just above the rocks. So where we could actually skin was narrow, icy, and fairly sketchy to snowboard down. I was with 2 skiers, and because I was already split in tour mode, because there was a long tour approach back to that path, it just made sense to lock my heels down. So with my skins on and my heels locked, I was able to ski very similar to a skier, which at the end of the day on a track like that is basically a pizza, doing a fairly aggressive power plow the whole way down that section. But it meant I could relax. I didn't have to worry about crashing. My showing off moments were done. I didn't have to prove I could do some crazy turn on a sketchy piece of ice. And it made getting back to the car a lot easier. So with the binding research, Karakoram offers this. They offer a heel lock out of the box with their bindings. It's something that you would buy as an extra piece with a number of the Spark products. And with some of the hard boot bindings, it sure seems Mickey Mouse how the heel lock works, but it works really well. So on my Phantom system, and what you eventually wind up doing on the Dyno system, is you take a ski strap, your standard rubber ski strap, and you would feed that through the heel riser and strap it over your boot. This means you can ski. Now, that actually leads into another question I saw, that is, if you're using a hard boot and you're caught in an avalanche, would you pop out of your bindings the same as a skier would? Sadly, no. So think of that as every bit as secure as a soft boot binding setup would be. There's no additional release or anything like that. Done on gear. Until anyone has any questions, we can sort of recap these points in the questions and answers period. But I wanted to reiterate April's point about taking courses and gaining additional education. The way that I got into this sport and the way that I learned about gear wasn't exclusively because I came into a shop like this and begged for a job until they said yes. It was talking to my friends. It was talking to skiers, talking to snowboarders, being careful on internet forums. Awful lot of people with an awful lot of opinions, and it's hard to validate whether or not those opinions are based in real life or based on something someone read once. So I opt for the real life experiences. When you take a course like an AST1 course that is offered by Mountain Skills Academy, you meet a whole bunch of new people, and those new people have new opinions. They have new ways to look at terrain, new ways to move through the mountain, and new opinions on where they want to take their splitboarding. It's a great way to make new friends and get new information. The various courses I've taken over the years, I certainly didn't stay connected with everybody, but there's usually a core group of people. You exchange information, you wind up going on tours with them, and it seems like the people I tour with, I remember those people for a very long time. I don't have a very strong memory of the people that I've had internet conversations with per se, but the people you tour with, you really get to know. So ASD1 course, very important. Avalanche safety equipment is something that the AST1 course will talk about, specifically transceiver use, probe use, and as silly as it sounds, how to dig, how to use a shovel. There is a technique to it, and it's not quite as simple as it may seem. Um, the other part of taking these courses and buying this gear, when you do come into a shop and it is time to purchase your own gear, you have a fair bit more knowledge about what you want. So through our rentals that Escape Route offers, I did mention that we offer the other gear you need to go snowboarding. So the other gear would be the skins that come with the board, the shovel, the transceiver, and the probe. And if there are additional pieces that you need, such as a backpack and other things, there are items that we have available as well. Now, in Squamish, in the store that I'm talking to you from tonight, we have a small fleet of rental snowboards. You can find that on our website. All of this is on escaperoute.ca. And you can book equipment in Squamish that has to be returned in Squamish. Or you can book equipment out of the Alpine Demo Center in Whistler, but it has to be returned to the Alpine Demo Center in Whistler. Try before you buy is great. And often with our store, we deduct the price of your rental, your demo, from your purchase, should you elect to make one. That's about it for me holding Escape Route's hat up high. I think I'll pass this back to April now for a little bit more conversation about this draw. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Okay, so we're going to take a couple minutes here to answer a few more questions. I know that James hit a couple of them right off the bat. Samantha is about boots. You nailed it, James. The intuition liners are a great way to maybe kind of help solve that problem a little bit in the short time, but I've got a few more here. Samantha also asked, do you suggest note-taking just on the Abbey forecast and your route plan in the days leading up to your tour, or are you suggesting taking notes in the field, more notes throughout the season, regardless of whether you're not going out or not? To a degree, more is better. And so if you are only going out in the backcountry, once every couple of weeks, then I would suggest trying to keep track of the avalanche conditions, trying to keep track of the storm cycles. And if you are a huge nerd like me, for sure, go buy yourself a Write in the Rain and write down the observations that you're seeing in the field. Processing that information in that way is going to help you really take weight of it. And, as you can see in my book, I definitely, I get involved with it. There's a lot going on there. I'm talking about, the current weather observations that I see when I wake up in the morning. One of the sites that I use for that is whistlerpeak.com. It's a host site that's going to bring in a ton of information about the current wind speeds, directions, temperatures, precipitation. It's something that I teach all of my AST1 students how to use. So yeah, Samantha, if you want to nerd out, I'm going to say nerd out. A book doesn't weigh a lot. A couple pencils doesn't weigh a lot. And if this is a lifetime pursuit for you, it will pay off 100%.
I already have a lot of those books.
Yes. Good job, Samantha. Right on. There was a couple other questions. One of them here from Allison. It says, if you're new to splitboarding, do you recommend riding a splitboard setup on the resort first to get some experience with the gear? If you have that opportunity, absolutely. Because if the first time you ride a splitboard is in marginal conditions in the backcountry or in deep, wet POW, you're gonna feel a little bit silly. So if you have the opportunity to either rent a splitboard, borrow a splitboard, if you already have one, like I said, go ahead and pack 15, 20 pounds in your backpack and go shred some groomers. It'll gain confidence. It'll help you gain confidence in your equipment. It'll help you learn how to carve a splitboard that might be a little stiffer and a little bit more aggressive than what you're used to, and help initiate that torsional flex that you might need in firmer conditions. So absolutely, Allison, if you have that opportunity, go for it. And like James was saying, that if you do go and rent a splitboard setup from the Escape Route and then later decide to buy, the cost of the rental will be taken off your purchase price. So that's not lost money. That is just going to help you out in the long term. There was a question from Sasha. Right, James already got that one. And a question from Liz, Alpine touring boots, can you custom fit them to your feet like ski boots? Yes, they are ski boots like anything else. So, one of the big pulls for me to start using ski boots was I had an incident a few years ago, and I broke my right foot really badly. And since that time, I had constant nerve pain when I was using my traditional soft boots. I was taking my soft boots to my boot fitter and I was getting them punched out like ski boots, and I was still experiencing nerve pain. And the minute I switched to a hard boot setup with an Intuition custom liner, I was good to go after that. It has been amazing ever since. And I've been beating those shells to a pulp ever since and just replacing my liners every year. And they fit so, so good. So for sure, I know a lot of snowboarders are going to tell me that the reason why they snowboard is because they don't have to wear ski boots. To each their own. For me, it's been an absolute godsend to make that transition. So that's what I need to say about that. There were a couple other questions. There was one down here from Ron: first aid gear for splitboarding and backcountry use. Yeah, that gets pretty involved. I mean, by taking a basic wilderness first aid course, you'll begin to understand the kind of gear that you need. But basically, we need to be able to treat lacerations, whether that's from a ski's edge or from a collision with a rock or a tree. So having some pressure bandages, having some gauze, having some tensor bandages like that. You want to be able to ideally splint a broken arm or a dislocated shoulder. So a SAM splint is something that I keep with me at all times, and a couple of triangle bandages that can be used to secure a shoulder, a broken collarbone, things like that. And then of course, all of your blister care. So, you've got your moleskin, you've got your Band-Aids, all of that basic stuff. And then I do carry some basic medications as well. So, I've got some Tylenol. I also got some stronger stuff in there just in case we have a bad accident. And then I've got some basic, cold and flu medication. If somebody's just having a bad day and they can't breathe very well, I'm going to give them a, Tylenol, cold and flu, and hopefully kind of get their head back in the game for the rest of the day. I'd love to hear from you, James, actually, if there's anything that you'd like to add with regards to first aid on that question.
As a gear nerd, I do carry a fair bit. So my first aid kit spills out into an overnight kit as well. I do carry a very small bivy. So I've got a little emergency bivy that is my, everything's gone horribly wrong, and I'm spending the night out there somewhere that wasn't planned. I carry waterproof matches, and we carry ibuprofen. I don't remember why. My wife said that was an important thing to have for her. So it's in my pack and it's in her pack. The C-Splint's fantastic. It lives in all of my first aid kits, and it's certainly something that's in my pack as well. I also have a spare hat, a spare pair of gloves. These are all small things I can compress into a little tiny bag in the bottom. The hat is bright, vivid orange, as are the gloves. And there's one of those little goofy aluminum reflective blankets that I'm sure when I need it, it's goofy at all. Haven't needed that yet.
Yeah, perfect. So, kind of to that regard, I have an old skin bag that in that bag, I've got my SAM splint, I've got my repair kit, which of course I've got my, lighter and waterproof matches and things like that. It contains my first aid kit, as well as a few extra ski straps, a headlamp, some spare batteries. And so everything is packed into that one bag. So if I'm ever going from backpack to backpack, from a 45 liter to a 35 liter or whatever it is, overnight to day pack, that stuff just moves all together in the one skin bag, and so nothing gets forgotten to that extent. The small bivy or the emergency blanket, James, you absolutely nailed it as well. There's a company called SOL that makes a wonderful array of products like that, and they've got a various different styles of bivvies. So they have a bivy sack, which essentially is that emergency reflective blanket by any other terms, but it's in the shape of a sleeping bag, and because of that, you can fully pack somebody into that, and it retains actually more body heat. I think it retains up to 90% of your body heat. Now, the bivy that I bought is a little bigger than the emergency style one, but again, I can use that on a day-to-day basis. If I'm out, even in the summer or in the off seasons and my sleeping bag isn't quite cutting it, I can get put that bivy on over top of my sleeping bag, and it keeps me nice and warm. It makes a little humid in there, a little humid the next morning, but nonetheless, I'm going to sleep nice and warm. Hopefully I have an opportunity to dry out my sleeping bag. But yeah, so all of these things, they add weight to our bags, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. I had a friend that told me he hiked 6 hours out of a backcountry hut one time because he lost the pin for his touring mode on his splitboard binding. And I said, man, 6 hours of boot packing is a bad situation that could have gotten really bad, like worse even quickly. And had he had a roll of hockey tape, at very least, he could have strapped himself to that ski and shuffled on out of the backcountry. I can't say that enough. Some people will swear by duct tape. Sure, no problem. Hockey tape is even better. It doubles as medical tape. It's higher strength. It can be rolled into cord if you want it and used to tie things. It is just my absolute godsend. And I mentioned that I replaced my pin toe piece earlier this year. I did because the pins had worn so much that my foot was slipping out, which of course I ignored for a little while, and I was getting by as long as I was skinning carefully and I was waiting for my pieces to come in the mail. But then one day it just stopped working entirely. And so I relied on a good old roll of hockey tape, which, by the way, you can buy for $2.50 at Source for Sports and Whistler, and it's going to save your butt one day. So I cannot reiterate on that enough. Let's see, what other questions that we have? The heel lock is something that
I can
go ahead,
grab there's an escape route question here.
do it.
So this question is, does Escape Route stock a standard first aid kit for taking into the backcountry? Or is there somewhere else you can suggest picking up these items? That's the question. We sell a number of off-the-shelf type of first aid kits that we believe are 60% of what you need. So we went ahead and made our own. And we do have a dedicated, specific backcountry ski, backcountry snowboard first aid kit. It's something you can find on our website. You go to escaperoute.ca, type in first aid, you'll see a $79 red first aid kit. We have a clear listing of what's in that kit, and it's fantastic. Thanks, April. Sorry, just thought I'd jump in and grab that.
Oh, no, absolutely. Amanda was asking me what type of hockey tape, the fabric type, not the plastic type. Fabric type is what you want. There was another question here from Jessica. Should you take an intro to split course before an AST course if you're brand new? Absolutely, 100%. So a lot of AST students, I get messages the night before the course being like, I'm so nervous, I've never put skins on before. If you want to take that worry out of it, go ahead and take an intro course. And it is going to go a long way to increase your confidence with the gear. And as a result, you're going to have more focus on, what we're teaching you and about the avalanche bulletin and all of those other things that need to be considered. So absolutely, we recommend taking an intro course. The great thing is as well, if you take a course with MSA, you will get a discount on every single course or product that you take with us from that point forward. So you take your intro, you're going to get a discount on your AST course. So you're going to save a little bit of money kind of on that side of things. There was another question here. The heel lock is something that I have talked to few split boarder friends about. None of them use them, but I have always wondered how much it can improve skinning downhill. It definitely makes a big difference when the time comes. Like James was saying, you can buy adapters for the Spark system. The Karakoram system comes with it. I'm going to be honest, I don't or didn't, when I had a soft boot system, use mine a lot. But when I did, it saved my butt. So yeah, it's definitely a feature that I would recommend if you have playing around with it and seeing what sort of skinning and skiing you can get done. I think a lot of people have heard whispers of singing paths that are new to the backcountry community. And I'll tell you right now that those heel lockers are going to go a long way on the singing paths trail. What am I looking at here? I have a question here. There's one from Jordan. It says, hi, I'm not a cat. Is there a crampon that can be efficiently switched on or off? Jordan, do you want to clarify your question so I can answer it for you? Are you still around, Jordan? Not quite. Okay. Are there any more questions that you guys would like to ask us? Samantha said, I missed out on what you said about the women's only splitboarding group and forum. Can you revisit that and let us know how to get involved? So it's a women specific backcountry program. It's not specific to splitboarding, but I do offer splitboard specific courses. It's called the Women's Backcountry Series. You can find it on Facebook. I've been running it for a couple of years now, and it's an amazing way and a low stress environment for women to get involved in the backcountry and to meet tons of ladies that want to go out touring as well. So please look up the Facebook group, and you can send me a direct message. You'll find my Facebook profile attached to that group. Okay, if there's nothing else, oh, Jordan, here we go. Jordan's tuned in. Jordan, that's not the cat. Can a crampon be kept on the board and just be activated on demand? So there's two types of crampons. I assume you're talking about what is known as a ski crampon. So it's the crampon that attaches to the split board in ski mode. And it's intended for hard, icy conditions when your edges just aren't quite cutting it, or when you've got some exposure and you want to have a bit of extra help there. The ski crampon will be, there we go. James has them right there. So that is directly attached to the toe piece for a hard boot setup. Now there is ski crampons for soft boots as well. So you'll have to look that up and find the compatible online. But yeah, so those ones are removed from the ski when you're not using them. That Dynafit style one there is really, really fast to get on and off, and you don't even have to take the ski off to do it. You just have to lift your foot up and not. And yes, Jordan, I understand that you are not a cat. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. So we're not going to keep you guys too much longer. You've been here for a while now. There's a few things that, piece of business we need to take care of. So for your time tonight, for joining us, we're giving away some intro to 2 spots on an intro to splitboarding course with me, by the way. And you will also be getting a full rental package from the Escape Route Alpine Demo Center. So the 2 names that we have drawn from the list of attendees here tonight is Samantha Taylor, number 1. So Samantha, you are getting an intro to splitboarding and a full rental setup. And last but not least, the second winner, please, if I butcher your name, forgive me, Nicole Markanova. You are also winning an intro to splitboard package as well as a full rental setup from the Escape Route Alpine Demo Center. Now, I understand that splitboarding is better with friends. And so as a result, I was just talking to my office manager here at MSA a few minutes ago. If you ladies would like to bring some friends, we're going to offer your friends a 15% discount on the intro to splitboarding as well. So I don't care if you got 1 friend or 5, we'll get you all booked up. Give the office a call and let us know. We'll be in contact with you in the next little bit here and make sure that you get all of the information for that. So yay, we've got some intro to splitboarding, which is awesome. And of course, you guys, you've got some eyes on the boards there out behind James that you might be able to take out with you. So that's kind of all I have to say. Now, I always tell my students that I want to be as much of a resource for them as possible. So I want to answer the questions moving forward, even if we didn't have a chance to get to them tonight. So please go ahead and leave a question in the comment box, or if you'd like, you can leave a question for me, as I mentioned on the Women's Backcountry series, or go ahead and send an email to my office, info@mountainskillsacademy.com, and we'll answer all of these questions for you. Last but not least, if you did not win, yes, congratulations, Nicole. If you did not win the intro to splitboarding package and you were hoping to, and you are a local of the Whistler Squamish area, MSA is going to offer you a 10% discount on any of our courses anyways. So if you have a local address, then go ahead and give our office a call and we will get you all signed up for your intro to splitboarding. That's kind of all I have to say tonight. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to me blab on again. This is the second virtual presentation that I've done here with the Escape Route, and trust me, I would much rather it be in person. But that being said, in this forum, we're able to get a lot more people in the room and we're able to do it responsibly and safely. So thanks for taking the time tonight. I'll turn it over to you, James, for the last few words.
That's fantastic, April. I don't know what else I have to say other than thanks to everybody for joining in. Thanks for your time tonight. we hope to see you on the hill.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.